Eric, so yeah, maybe just give us an overview of what Ramp does, how everything that Reid just described is affecting your business and fintech more broadly.
Absolutely, and wonderful to be here. So Ramp is a finance automation platform. We're focused on functionally workflow and productivity related to movement of money. We're known for operating the fastest growing corporate card in the US, bill payment software, expense management, accounting automation, and the like. And all of our products are designed with the intent of helping customers spend less money. Most financial products are designed with the same or more and spend less time. And so really what we're focused on is workflows that companies need to run in order to disperse funds, close their books, and everything in between. I think the effect on AI from the business has been frankly profound. From even the founding year of the company, where there's simple things in expense management like text a receipt, match it to the proper transaction is very simple machine learning, to today when you think about accounting, ultimately these are generally accepted accounting principles. These are rules fundamentally of how transactions should be categorized and coded. And as you think about what are the patterns and how can you learn from the 10,000 plus businesses, hundreds of thousands of folks learning, using automating both keeping of records, risk management and assessment, to even go to market, even in the way that Ramp has been able to grow so efficiently, has come down to embracing AI and in our sales characteristics and lead routing and mapping the like. And so I'm happy to go deep, but there's probably 10 core work streams all throughout the business that are leveraging in some way from pattern matching to generative use cases as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. So one interesting topic is, and Reid, I know Sam Altman talks a lot about this, where kind of the original narrative of AI was, that it was going to automate more basic tasks, right? Like more solvable problems like accounting or law. And, the original thesis was that the last things to be automated were poets and photographers and graphic designers. It turns out that that's actually been the reverse, right? With at least this first wave of generative AI, where the creativity gives the models a little bit of leeway for making mistakes. And at least the current state of these generative models, they don't lead to 100% accuracy. But in fields like healthcare or like financial services, 100% accuracy is required in many cases. And so what's your take on how fields like finance are going to be able to leverage these models?
Well, first, premise of the question is not 100% correct, because there is no 100% human accuracy. I presume most of the people in this room would know that if you were asked to have an average radiologist read your x-ray film or a trained AI, you should take the trained AI if it's an average one. If it's the best one, or like one of the best ones, great, take that, and better yet, take the two together. So there is no such thing as human infallibility anywhere, including in finance.
That's especially true.
Yes. So, and so part of what we have to do is we have to kind of figure out, now part of the thing is we know how to hold human systems accountable and what accountability law looks like, and what the error rate within human and what's acceptable when it's person plus machine or when it's machine driven. Those will be relevant variables. Obviously, we worry about things like, for example, AI applied to credit decisioning, of do you have, systematically biased data? Now, one of the benefits is to say, well, becomes now a scientific problem, which you can then work on and fix, as opposed to the human judgment problem, where you say, well, we have that human judgment problem in how we're allocating credit scores or credit worthiness or parole or everything else today in our human system. The machine system may start out looking like it's going to systematize the old one, but we can fix it so that we can move past that, especially in person plus machine. And that's, I think, one of the things you're going to see with AI across a number of fields, including in finance and some of the early areas. I did publish a book last week called Impromptu with GPT-4 as a co-author, where the central thesis was it's not artificial intelligence, it's augmentation intelligence. Right, and obviously in various ways it is also artificial intelligence, but it's the look at how you amplify people, like the co-pilot thing that I was saying earlier. And as an exemplar of that, now I did deploy my own personal team in helping me with this. We started writing the book in January. Right? So with that, we got it out, and there are physical copies. Now the physical copies are more print on demand from Amazon, but we got it out last week, right? So that's the kind of thing of the proof in the pudding with, like, think about how this augments human activity. Again, augmentation, amplification. That's the pattern to be thinking as how you go forward. And of course, there's a whole bunch of stuff when you begin to think about fintech products, how you operate as a fintech company, where this touches.
Yep. There's a bunch of founders in this room, right? And also people who are who want to start companies, right? And so maybe this would be starting with Eric. Let's say you hadn't started Ramp, and you're not the current CEO of Ramp. You see this kind of Cambrian explosion in AI, and you see these advancements that Reid's describing. What are the most interesting opportunities? Like, what type of startup would you build?
Yeah, I mean, I think in some sense that many of the companies behind AI are often focus on productivity in the workplace. I think in some sense reveals where many of these interesting use cases are. Put differently, I think when you look at a lot of knowledge work fundamentally based in data, where by default almost all of it is digital, if you can start to get involved in those workflows, in both the movement of funds and reduction of work and augmentation of those folks, I think there's a lot of interesting things. And so, look, I think one of the most interesting areas is frankly around accounting. There's a lot, it is fundamentally pattern based. There's a large set of folks who need to look at repeated data. They're both within a company and you can learn across. So there's data network, there's proprietary data, there's some network effects, there's clear patterns, and some personalization that needs to take place. And I think when you start to combine those efforts, I think accounting is a very interesting space. I do think in fintech particularly, I think there's both the ability to have better risk assessment and fraud fighting, as well as probably a great opportunity for fraudsters too. I wouldn't recommend it as a venture-funded business, but when you think about a lot of it.
It's not a U.S. domiciled one, but yes.
It turns out these are big businesses, just not based here.
The Russian VCs might be yes.
I think that's true. It's a lot of opportunity,
Yes.
for when you can generate someone's look, face, sound, predict information about them. And so I think both sides around that's going to be very significant opportunities. And last, just secularly, even outside of AI, the notion that core financial service products, which once were locked, if you were a bank, you could store money and move money. Now those requirements, well, you need to be thoughtful about regulations and the effect it has. It's a much more competitive, and I think in a good way, open field that allows innovation that has happened in the rest of the world should no longer miss financial services. And so I think it's quite exciting.
Yep. And Reid, just along these lines, there's a debate on whether startups or incumbents are kind of better positioned to take advantage of these advancements in large models. What's your framework in terms of which incumbents are best positioned to take advantage of this wave, and which opportunities are more available for new entrants?
Well, look, the short answer is there's such a tsunami of stuff here. There's massive opportunity all around. So the usual kind of false dichotomy question is it only going to be Microsoft, OpenAI, Google, and too bad for everything else? No. Are there going to be things that these companies are going to dominate and do? Yes, but there's tons of room for other things. Among them, last year with 𝗦𝗲𝗲𝗸𝗏 Suleyman, former co-founder of DeepMind, venture partner at Greylock, we co-founded Inflection. Unfortunately, I won't be able to talk much about Inflection. We'll be able to talk more about it in a month. Maybe we'll come back through town. But that's a startup opportunity. So you're putting our money where our mouth is and doing this, and we have obviously a variety of great companies, Adept with David, Cresta, Snorkel, et cetera. We have a whole stack of AI companies that are invested in and going. So now, to the more broad thing is, there's going to be a combination of, I think, two broad trends. One broad trend is the mega models, which are super valuable and important, and there's a bunch of ways that will turn out to be super valuable and important. But if you take, interesting areas like medicine, law, coding, and you say, okay, we're going to spend $500 million to make the larger, better model of this, and it's going to be 20% better. Well, in those, you're going to do it. We have his internet distribution, major distribution ends, and you're like, okay, the 20% better product will just naturally have, with nothing else, some network effects because everyone can get it through the internet, right, as a way of doing it. And so the people doing the really big models and putting that in, which there'll be a small n number of, and I don't think only Microsoft, Google, OpenAI. I think there will be, 1 to 5 others.
Well, OpenAI is a good example of, you
Yes.
wouldn't have predicted that 5 years ago. But,
yes.
Or you actually would have because you did invest in it,
Yes.
but most people wouldn't. Yeah.
Yes, although the investment was from my foundation because it was like, no, actually, in fact, this project for AGI is a very good thing. We had a discussion around the partnership table of should we do this, and we're like, okay, no revenue plan, no go-to-market plan. Like, we have a responsibility to our LPs to put something into that is doing that. So, in retrospect, if you could have said, hey, look at now, then we would have said, how much of it can we take? But, that's always the easy part of investing is the 10-year look back. But anyway, so there will be this large channel, and then there also will be a whole bunch of smaller models for all kinds of reasons. Specially tuned, something in finance that does a specific kind of accounting or fraud, other kinds of stuff. Something that may run on your phone, And there will be a whole bunch of those things. So for example, GPT-3 was very expensive to run the last compute run on. About a month ago, I saw something was maybe, this is a swag, 80% of GPT-3 that, cost $3 million to make. Right, and this is partially this other channel of stuff that will be happening, images, text, other kinds of things. And both of those will have great economic opportunities in them. And the thing that people a little bit too much mistake go to is it's just because I have an AI tech. It's like, well, actually, there's a lot of what's your go-to-market, what's your business model, how does that tune, how do you competitively position, how do you create a moat? Is the moat a network effect or is it something else? Those will broadly still play into how you're thinking about how the tech disrupts things. So the short answer is that it isn't only large incumbents, isn't only startups, it's massively both.
Yep, that makes a lot of sense. And Eric, on this topic of large language models versus more fine-tuned models, I'm curious, as it relates to RAMP, obviously you have a huge kind of workflow opportunity of just applying some of these large language models to your existing product. Having better underwriting, et cetera. Are there any opportunities for you to also invest in some fine-tuned models and some of your own AI?
I think it's a super interesting and present question for a lot of practitioners, people building startups. Do you bet on either A, the mega models, or B, more fine-tuned in-house development models? And frankly, so I'd be curious for your view and opinion on it. It seems to me, I think
the
there's
very unhelpful general answer is it depends.
It depends. Fair enough.
It's the more detailed conversation that we'll get to maybe X or Y.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
It's
anyway. So I didn't mean to interrupt your answer.
It's totally. We'll dig in, but I think that's right. Of ultimately, what do I think? So first, I think that for a variety of use cases, relying on, I wouldn't bet against of what's happening in the mega models themselves for the vast and general use cases, empowering more experienced generalized use cases using that. But there are a variety, I would be thinking as folks building businesses of, is there proprietary data that's involved in the workflow of your business? Is there a data effect? Is there some level of personalization? And as you run it through, does the experience get better for every customer? And I think even back to some of the themes that we've been touching on, there may be broad-based risk and underwriting that once you start getting data, you can apply it and turn it on. But there may be even smaller use cases and loops of from tagging transactions to understanding more about specific merchants and learning from the set and sharing that back out that you can tune to your model. And I think makes sense for tuned models. I think one of the other questions specifically for finance, whereas most of these mega models have been trained primarily, whether it's text, or images, in some cases code. I think that there are larger models being built, on numbers, relationships, accounting, and so I think the answer will evolve over time. I think in outside of the training set of the mega models, I think the functional answer today is training more locally, but being ready and thinking about, is your stack prepared to make a switch and evaluate? Because I think that the core infrastructure and coding development is changing so rapidly. And so building in a way where if you need to change things out, I think is important in this style of architecture.
Yep.
Everything Eric said is exactly right. Here's how I'd also amplify, which is, if your theory of the game is a thin layer around the AI model, you'd better be playing on the trend of the large models, right?
Yep.
And you better be anticipating the next large model. If that's not your theory, then the small model or the self-run model or whatever can itself go. But what happens is people go, well, I just put a thin layer around it. You're like, well, the large models are going to blow you out of the water almost every single time, unless you just happen to be I'm trading to the next large, the large models are back and I'm just trading to it. The next one happens. Fine, that can be a strategy too. But anyway, that would be another principle to add to it.
But so let's project 5 years out, right? What impact will this technology have on just regular people, and what are you most optimistic for?
I mean, I think it's funny, like many of my competitors, their founders were around the 1800s, they wore top hats, they're
Very well said.
these organizations are not built thinking about how much time takes for people. They have all the time in the world, tens of thousands of employees, and time is functionally free, but it's not for most people. Right, and when I think about most aspects of financial services, there's an incredible amount of busy work that's required, whether it's in applications, in reviews, in submitting expense reports, and doing accounting, and doing procurement, figuring out what things cost. And if you collapse the amount of work it takes in order to get at more data and understand what's happening in the world and have the world's knowledge given to you more rapidly, personalized to the problems you're solving, or have work done for you, it's incredibly freeing. For us, one of the most common things that customers will say about Ramp is, I don't think about expense reports anymore. I have time actually to do the interesting strategic work, not just to go and collect receipts and tag transactions. And I think that's a very small and early sign of things to come. And so in many ways, allowing people to be more strategic, focused on higher level work and more interesting and profound questions, I think I think that's the potential.
All right, I think let's break there, but thank you, Reid. Thank you, Eric. I really appreciate you taking the time. Yeah.
And thank all of you to coming to our dinner on Friday night.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you have great conversations with the people here, and yeah, enjoy the evening.